John Felt here, and this is the Blue Water Outlook Weekly Weather Briefing, July 7th, 2019. Hope everybody had a great 4th of July weekend. Now it's back at work. We're in the middle part of summer, and this time of year, what we typically see is typical summer weather, and that is hot and humid with scattered, that's 20 to 40% usually each day, scattered precipitation, and the focus of action tends to shift with the jet stream over the upper tier of the U.S., the northern plains, the upper Midwest, Great Lakes, northeast U.S. And we also have to keep an eye on the Gulf of Mexico and close in off the southeast coast for any tropical development. So that's usually what we see as we get into the core of summer. Now over the last week, you can see we had a lot of typical summer weather. That's all this sort of pot-marked or popcorn type precipitation over a large part of the mid-Atlantic, Ohio River Valley, and southeast U.S. A little bit more organized precipitation, fairly widespread 2 to 4 inches of rain over parts of the Missouri River Basin, and rivers have responded in this area here, rising to near flood stage or above flood stage. Over the upper Mississippi, which we've had certainly a prolonged flood event, you can see that we had some more rain, but it's more limited in aerial coverage or basin average coverage, so that's probably not going to have much of an effect except on tributaries. So overall, I would call this fairly typical summertime. Now look at the West Coast. Very little rain. Once again, hardly any rain west of the Rockies there. You can see the divide right here, and very little rain over the western U.S. Now it's definitely been muggy, and I put out a post on this last week saying that the past rainfall, the heavy rain in spring and summer, possible feedback. Where it's been wet, it's going to remain dry. I should say, when I was saying that, I was looking at how dry these dew points are here. When it's been very wet, it very well could have additional low-level moisture that would add the clouds an additional chance of rain. On the other hand, where it's really dry like this, these very low dew points are saying it's extremely dry, it's hard to form precipitation in summertime. So we're seeing a bit of that. Also want to point out, we've had some oppressive heat index readings above 100. Look at the dew points, 77s here, 76, 74 up into Missouri. So look at this, 77 right around Evansville. So very high dew points combined with just typical summer heat will give us excessive heat index readings. Okay, so when we look at soil moisture, I want to sort of keep in mind and sort of begin to slowly transition into the tropical season and start thinking of vulnerabilities. And right now, from a vulnerability standpoint, most of the southeast and mid-Atlantic is in pretty good shape as far as soil moisture with dry soils here. Likewise with the Gulf. The one exception would be the West Gulf. That's still trending a bit wet. One of the things I've noticed, and hopefully you remember here from the last number of briefings, is how parts of the central U.S., the upper Mississippi, was extremely wet due to the past rainfall, and we keep on losing week to week that blue, and that's saying soils are trending back a little bit closer to normal. West Coast, droughts expanding. Look how dry the soils are over the western part of Washington State, parts of western part of Oregon as well. So we look at stream flow, we see some fairly significant extremes here. We still see a vulnerability. Even though soil moisture's come down, we still see a lot of stream flow that's unusually high over the upper Mississippi, parts of the northern Ohio basin, parts of the Missouri, and lower Mississippi. So even though they're falling at this time, they still remain unusually high. On the other hand, Pacific Northwest, we're looking at a very low stream flow. These dark red dots here are indicating stream flow well below normal. Soil temperatures, I wanted to mention how we've really warmed up the soils, not just due to the daytime high temperatures, but also the nighttime low with the dew points in the mid-70s. It keeps the nighttime low temperature up. That allows these soils to warm. So why is that significant? Well, certainly for crops it's significant, but we've reached the threshold in most areas now for germination and good crop growth. I did want to mention, though, that one of the things that this does is it helps pull the moisture out of the ground when we get vigorous crop growth, and that's something that we need to reduce the vulnerability due to that high soil moisture. Okay, so let's dig into the forecast here, and what we see is we see the jet stream once again well to the north, pretty much where it should be, over the upper plains, northern plains, upper Midwest, Great Lakes, northeast U.S., and then over the southern part of the U.S., very light stream flow, or very light jet stream. So one of the things, if we do get these pop-up storms with such a light jet stream, they're not going to move too far. Now, there might be a west to east component here, but they're just not going to move all that much. And that's going to give us the chance for flash flooding because those storms aren't moving too much. I don't expect a real widespread coverage. I don't expect a major issue here, but I just want to point out, and that's sort of typical summertime. Heavy thunderstorms, a lot of moisture, localized, but if you do get that rain, it can be very heavy. Okay, so we look forward for the next 2 weeks. What do we see? Well, we see a very dominant pattern, a very large area of high pressure here. And if you look at it, it just sort of sits here over the south, central, southwest U.S. And with time, it even looks like it sort of builds a little bit to the back to the east. So this is going to dominate a large part of the nation with below normal precipitation. Jet stream still over the upper Midwest, so there'll be some precipitation embedded in this jet stream flow. But that high pressure is going to dominate with generally above normal temperatures and dry conditions. And we can see the transition here as we go through the next 2 weeks, where we have a bit of lingering cool weather. I shouldn't really say cool, but pleasant summer weather in the area in blue in the middle U.S. But over time, you can see that we go above normal temperatures over most of the U.S. Now, one of the reversals is over the northwest U.S. You can see we start with above normal, but we end up with below normal. So that ridge is dominating basically this area here, and overall that transition even up into the Great Lakes above normal. Now, as far as the tropics go, there's something I want to bring to your attention. Hey, look at this. They have that arrow going the wrong way, don't they? It should be coming up here. Nope. This is what is expected to happen. An area of low pressure here. It's going to drift out into the Gulf of Mexico, sit here for a bit, pick up some of that really warm tropical moisture, and then gradually drift up towards the northeast. The odds are favored that it could develop. I don't think it's going to develop to anything significant, but it's going to produce a lot of heavy rain offshore and along the immediate coast. One of my favorite places, Destin area. Well, I don't want to get too pessimistic here, but it could eventually be a pretty wet week, and that is going to push up into this area here over time. I don't think it's going to have a really big impact as far as flooding other than coastal type inundation perhaps, but this area here, the southeast U.S., is quite dry. Okay, let's look a little bit further out, or sort of look into our extended 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 large areas of the country, both 6 to 10 and 8 to 14. This isn't picking up on that cool pocket yet into the Pacific Northwest. We'll have to see if that pans out or not in week 2. But right now, it looks like a majority of the U.S. is going to be experiencing usually warm conditions during the hottest time of the year. So it's going to be a very hot middle part of July. At the same time, many areas are going to have below normal precipitation with the exception of the southeast U.S. Here's that tropical system. And then week 2, this is your typical summertime, daytime showers and thunderstorms. Climatologically is normal over that area. Now, if you're monitoring the main stem rivers, upper Mississippi, Ohio, Missouri, and even the lower Mississippi, all rivers are falling at this time, almost all. And with this type of pattern, I do expect continued recession in the rivers. So our risk assessment here, we do have some risk. We have the excessive heat this week due to that lingering high humidity with high temperatures. I said that I didn't expect a whole lot of heavy rain, but there's going to be some localized mesoscale or smaller scale type rainfall in this region right here and in this region, also some severe weather. And then we're going to have the heavy rain coming in from the tropics in this region. So nothing all that widespread or organized, but there will be some things going on across the country. So overall, it looks like sustained recession of some rivers that have been above flood stage. Overall, typical summertime weather in most areas, and that means hot. And then an interesting situation in the Gulf of Mexico to see what that low does. I don't think it's going to necessarily be a significant or memorable system, but it is something that we do need to keep an eye on. That's this week's briefing. As we get into the middle part of summer, have a great week. Talk to you again next weekend.